Brandon, where were you? Why didn't you show up for my wedding rehearsal? Mom's been trying to reach you since 6, and she's really angry, really. And where is Mom? She just went to drop my biological dad off at his motel. Chloe said, though I noticed her eyes dart away as she said this. I continued what I had been doing before my stepdaughter's arrival, which was removing my certificate of commendation from the wall of the lounge. What are you doing, Brandon? Mom cleaned all those frames not 6 weeks ago. I'd ignored her and carried the framed certificate into the kitchen. Chloe followed me, watching as I carefully wrapped it in bubble wrap and placed it into one of the already packed boxes. She twirled the skirt of her dress for a moment, and the sight suddenly brought back memories of the many dance recitals I had attended during her childhood. Only now, she wasn't dancing for Daddy. She was rushing back to the lounge. I was just behind her, carrying the completed box, when I noticed her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. It was only then that it registered with her all the items that were uniquely mine had disappeared from the walls and shelves. If she checked my wardrobe or tools in the garage, they'd be gone too. I was out the front door, packing the box into the back seat of my car, when I sensed Chloe had followed me and was standing there watching. She spoke in a small, trembling voice, shocked by what she was witnessing, something she had never even considered before. "You're leaving us?" she asked. "Yes, you finally noticed. I've been moving my stuff out for 4 days now, but neither you nor your mom noticed. Maybe that tells you something." "I'm sorry, Brandon," Chloe said. "I've been a little preoccupied with the wedding. You'll still come, won't you?" "No, I won't. I thought my not attending a rehearsal tonight would make that clear." "Well, why, Dad?" she asked softly. "Oh, I'm Dad again, am I?" said, raising an eyebrow. "I stopped being called that 3 weeks ago, didn't I?" Chloe shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. Old instincts kicked in. I said, "Look, come back inside. It's cold out here. I'll just ring Mom first." "You can try," I replied, "but I suspect her phone will be off." I walked back inside, heading for the lounge and sitting on a couch. I heard Chloe on her phone, obviously leaving a voicemail for her mom to call her urgently. Then she flopped into one of the overstuffed armchairs, which seemed to swallow her tiny frame. I waited for her to gather her thoughts and start the conversation, but from the look on her face, I could tell she was struggling to know where to begin. Finally, she asked, "Why aren't you coming to my wedding? Surely you must have a clue." I responded, "No, none." And I could see from the somewhat amused look on her face that the extreme self-centeredness that often takes over brides had totally blinded her to the reality of the situation. It saddened me. I hadn't thought she was capable of such self-absorption. I gave myself a mental shake. I was in a hurry to move on and didn't have time for this, so I took control of the conversation. "Chloe, I've loved you since I met you when you were a chubby little 2-year-old with perpetually grubby fingers. I still love you, and depending on how things go from here, I may well love you forever." I paused, trying to decide the best way to continue, then resolved to follow the format I had used in the letter I tucked into my pocket, the one I intended to leave for Chloe and her mother when I left. "When I met your mom, she had just been dumped by your biological father. We've told you the story enough times. He was a drunk, and after your mom caught him with another woman for the second time, she threatened to leave him unless you promised to change. Instead, he up and left you both. He abandoned you." I paused, waiting for Chloe to add anything, but she simply stared at me. "Your mom lost the house shortly after that because she couldn't make the rent. We met, fell in love, got married, and moved into this house with my 2 sons, Brian and Matthew. Our old place just wasn't big enough anyway. I digress. I loved your mom and I love you. I loved you as if you were my own, the same as I did my biological children. I never hesitated to take on the responsibility of raising you. I thought I did a pretty good job until a month ago." Chloe must have noticed the tremor in my voice during that last sentence because it seemed to bring her back to reality. "You were Dad," she said quietly. "You were the best father a girl could have. Many of my friends were jealous of me, and I couldn't believe it when I told them you were only my stepfather." She paused, her hand going to her mouth, clearly surprised by her own words. In that instant, she realized what had crept up on me over the past last month. I continued with my script. "I like the guy you chose as a life partner, and I was the proudest man in the world when you asked me to walk you down the aisle." I paused again, letting the weight of where this conversation was going sink in. I could see when it hit her. She turned her face away. Yes, Chloe, you never did invite me to walk you down that aisle, did you? Your biological dad came back into the picture, and now I'm out, and he's in both your and your mom's thoughts and conversations. I'm yesterday's hero. Did you know she's been so inattentive that she didn't even realize I never rented a suit for tomorrow? Like she asked me to. I guess that tells you how little she was paying attention to me. I watched as Chloe struggled to figure out which of the issues I'd raised she should address first. I saw the horror on her face as she realized she'd forgotten to ask the only father she'd known until now to give her away on her biggest day. I was certain an apology for that would follow, but instead she tried to justify everything. Brandon, you've met my biological dad. He's larger than life. You must see that. He only came back into my life last month after he heard I was getting married, and it's just been so wonderful. With that flashy car of his and the way he's been spoiling me, buying me whatever I look at twice. He's just, well, what can I say? We both, Mom too, I suppose, just assumed he'd be the one walking me down the aisle. I'm sorry I forgot I had already asked you. It's just that everything's been like a whirlwind since he came back. He just swept me off my feet. Swept you off your feet, I repeated. Yes, that's exactly what he did. You must admit he's just a good salesman. I saw his charm too, except I didn't fall for it. You, on the other hand, and your mom, were both blind to my warnings. And yes, I saw him as a smooth talker, just like the rest of them. But I still have a question. Don't you realize he's the same lying, cheating jerk who abandoned you and your mom 20 years ago? He ran out on you then, and as soon as he gets what he wants this time, he'll abandon you again. Oh, don't be so bitter, Dad. I mean, Brandon, she stammered. I'm sorry I forgot to tell you that my biological dad was walking me down the aisle. It's my fault, not his. Don't take it out on him or call him all those nasty names. What evidence do you have that he's still a philanderer? I had rehearsed my response in my head one more time, knowing the answer would be hard for her to hear. My 20-year relationship was already over, but had I also lost a daughter? I took a deep breath. Well, just out of curiosity, where's your mom? I asked. I saw the flicker of recognition on Chloe's face, the realization I was insinuating something about her mother. She hesitated. I pressed on. I want to make sure we don't end our relationship with a bunch of lies so we can preserve some memory of mutual respect. I'll tell you something. I found condoms in your mom's purse this morning. They were clearly bought with tonight in mind. I had a vasectomy before I met her, so they weren't for me. Obviously, they weren't for you because you're on the pill. The packet wasn't opened yet, so maybe she hasn't slept with him yet. But buying them 24 hours in advance indicates intent, don't you think? Chloe stood there speechless. So I went on, I can only conclude you're complicit in your mother betraying me, betraying our wedding vows by sleeping with that slimy jerk. Did you think it was romantic, like a fairy tale, that your mom and dad were getting back together, and you could play happy families with a Porsche in the driveway instead of the Nissan I bought you? Chloe opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't bother. Forget I asked. The answer doesn't matter. You knew and did nothing to let me know. That ends our relationship right here, right now. I stood up, stepped toward her, pulled her to her feet, and hugged her tightly, holding back the flood of emotions I hadn't yet released. In a shaky whisper, I sent my final words to her. I loved you. And with that, I walked out of her life. As I glanced back from the door, I saw the look of devastation on her face. Tears streaked down her cheeks, her body trembling as she gasped for air. She fumbled for her phone, likely hoping her mother had it turned on, wishing that her mother hadn't yet crossed the line, or that maybe her mother could convince me to forgive her. Chloe didn't want to lose her other dad, the one who had pleaded with her mother to stop falling out of love with him all month, while she let herself be swept away by a smooth-talking salesman with a troubled past. I shrugged off her heartbreak. Whether my wife had physically crossed the line or not, the evidence I found that morning combined with her actions these past weeks was enough. Originally, I planned to move out temporarily, just to show my displeasure, but that morning's discovery of the condoms forced me to accept the separation would be permanent. My conscience was clear as I got into my car and drove away. The rest of this story includes both facts and hearsay. Some parts I know for sure, others I can only guess. That evening, I tried to track down the motel where Philip, The jerk biological father was staying. My motivation, I wanted to witness my wife's betrayal firsthand to harden my heart for what I had to do. But my efforts were in vain, so I switched to plan B. After leaving Chloe, I parked down the street from my home of 20 years and turned off my lights. Less than a minute later, my former daughter sped past in her car, so fast a herd of elephants could have followed her unnoticed. She drove straight to a particular motel and rushed into a particular room. I wasn't far behind, armed with my old SLR camera and its zoom lens. I heard Chloe's shouts, but it was her mother, Vanessa, who opened the door. Yes, my wife's real name is Vanessa, but let's keep it that for clarity. Mentally, I braced myself for what I might see, though ironically, what struck me wasn't the sight of Vanessa in a hastily thrown on motel robe with messed up hair or Philip behind her in boxers. It was the panic on her face when she saw me parked at a distance, camera in hand. For 20 years, I'd protected her from such raw emotions. I tossed the camera onto the passenger seat, turned off my phone, and drove into the night. By the time Chlo was admitted to the room and the door closed, I was gone. What happened next, I only learned from various sources. The wedding still took place the next day, but it was delayed until 6 p.m. instead of the scheduled 10 a.m. They had to track down the mother of the bride, who spent the night searching for me, apparently. Then more time was lost trying to locate the bride's biological father, Philip, but he'd already disappeared, exactly as I told Chloe. Once he got what he wanted, he was gone. Possibly the most expensive fling of his life. He had a second wife who evidently discovered the photos I mailed her. She dumped him, enforcing her family's resources with ruthless precision, or so I heard. Rumor says he wound up badly beaten, with ruptured testicles and broken bones in an alley, courtesy of his father-in-law's hired men. Meanwhile, the wedding eventually took place. They missed the original church time, but the vicar rescheduled for the evening. I never did show up, nor was I asked to. Word spread among friends and family that I was gone, and I'd left after discovering my wife's betrayal. Some pitied me, some scorned Vanessa, others shrugged. Chloe was said to have walked down the aisle alone with her mother in disarray. The groom, apparently a decent guy, tried to keep the event together, but the atmosphere was tainted by scandal. As for me, I spent months processing the heartbreak. Initially, I'd thought about a scorched earth approach, legal battles, public humiliation for Vanessa, but in the end, I simply wanted to be free. I accepted a minimal settlement in the divorce, which she signed without protest, and I moved in with my younger son, Matthew, for a while, keeping my location quiet. My older son, Brian, also cut contact with Vanessa. They hated seeing how broken I was, so they offered unwavering support. Chloe eventually reached out, wanting me to forgive her mother. She claimed Vanessa was just confused by old feelings for Philip, that it was a fling gone too far. Maybe that's true, but I'd had no interest in reconciling with a woman who'd so easily disrespected our vows. I told Chloe I still loved her as my stepdaughter, but I wouldn't pretend to love her mother anymore. We parted on slightly okay terms, though it's never been the same. Rumor has it Chloe and her new husband keep Vanessa at arm's length, too, partly out of resentment for how she overshadowed their wedding day with drama. Fast forward a year or so, and ironically, I found a new relationship. I met Molly, a widowed mother from the same neighborhood as my younger son. The connection was immediate, the trust came easier than expected, and soon I realized I'd found my true partner. Some call it fate, but I see it as a second chance after a nightmare. She was gentle, real, and never once played games with me. Her children accepted me readily, and I discovered that not every relationship has to be a battlefield of secrets. Recently, her daughter asked me to walk her down the aisle for her small wedding next summer. I felt a wave of redemption, like I could be the father figure I once was for Chloe, but now for someone who genuinely wants me there. My grin nearly split my face. I posted about it on social media, and 2 days later, I saw a brief comment from Vanessa. They're lucky. If only. I ignored it. I'm in no hurry to respond. Let the past stay in the past. So, dear readers, share your thoughts. You might say I overreacted or gave up too soon. But once trust is shattered by a spouse who invites her ex back in, disrupting your life, overshadowing your role as father, there's hardly a reason to stay. Maybe I was a fool for not seeing it earlier, but in the end, I walked away with dignity and a bit of heartbreak. Now, with Molly, I'm building a new life free of deception, full of genuine affection. That's the best revenge, living well, unshackled by the manipulations of someone who never truly valued me. Thanks for reading. If there's a moral, it's that sometimes heartbreak opens the door to a happiness you never knew you could have.